Morocco. What do you know about Morocco?
It's in a different continent than we were learning.
That's true. The past couple of days we were looking at Asia, and today we will look at Africa. Do you know any countries in Africa?
Without looking at the map, do you know any countries in Africa? I mean, without looking for
Morocco.
Morocco.
Good. There you go. That's progress. Do you know where Morocco is on the map?
Right there.
Like right where the
Right
these yellow
here.
things start. Yeah, that's where I was pointing to.
Okay. Do you see what's different about Africa compared to the other continents?
It has a lot more orange stuff on it.
Yeah. Do you know what the orange stuff is?
Flatland. Or mountains.
Desert. Desert and mountains, but it means there's tons and tons of sand. It's like a giant beach, except with no ocean.
Except on the coastline.
Right, only on the coastlines do you find ocean. And Morocco is all the way up here in the northwest corner of Africa. It's actually really, really close to Europe. If we zoom all the way in here, you can see that Spain and the corner of Morocco are super close. In fact, it's actually only 9 miles apart, which would be kind of like, well, I don't know what's 9 miles from your house. Maybe your church. It would be like walking to your church.
Whoa.
which is far, but not that far.
Yeah.
It's far
That's
for a
close.
walk, but in terms of 2 continents, if you think about where I showed you Pennsylvania compared to Asia, this is really, really close. It's 9 miles. Someone who's a really good swimmer could actually swim across it. And I actually went across it by boat. When I visited Morocco, I took a boat from Spain all the way over to this little star here in Morocco. In fact, I even have a photo. This was when my buddy Harry and I got on a boat and went across into Morocco. So, some things to know about Morocco. Most of the cities of Morocco, the places where all the people live, are up here in the northwest corner near the water, because living all the way out in the desert is really, really hard. When there's no water, it's really difficult to live, and there's not as many animals. So people tend to live closer to the water, which is where all their cities are.
But there are camels, lizards in there.
And
There are
scorpions.
camels. Yep, all of those things.
Scorpions.
But in Morocco, they don't eat scorpions or lizards. So they
Good.
don't have much to eat out in the desert. And there's no plants, so they can't eat plants either. So they tend to stay near the water because that's where the plants and animals tend to be. So one of the things you'll notice that's different about Morocco is that it looks a lot different from the cities you're used to and the cities we looked at in Asia. In Asia, most of the cities I showed you pictures of were really, really tall and really modern buildings, were very sort of ancient, and Asian style buildings. But here in Morocco, what do you see is different about the style of the buildings?
They're like gold and very colorful.
Yep, there is a lot of color, but the buildings themselves actually kind of look like stone, don't they? Kind of like what the mountains would look like or what the desert might look like.
Drew, can you click on one of them so they can see it a little bigger?
Yeah, sure.
They look
that
like
orange?
stone.
Yeah,
they
that
can
looks
see that
like
a lot
stone.
there.
That looks like stone.
Yeah,
But what is it
So-
made of?
it's made of clay and stone, and generally people will use whatever materials they have to make their buildings and their products. So for example, in Morocco, they're in the desert where there's not a lot of water. So the kinds of rocks that they have and the kinds of stone and clay are more orange, they're harder. And so they use these types of things when they're making their buildings.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very different. And they have these really colorful markets where they sell different kinds of colorful clothes and different kinds of pottery. So here's an example. I'll zoom in
Whoa.
on some pottery. So they like to use colors like blues and greens and reds and yellows into different things to hold their food.
Whoa.
And they also make very colorful rugs. And so Morocco is very famous for their rugs. And when you go out into the markets, you'll see that a lot of people are selling rugs that they made, and they hang them up over their buildings so you can see what they look like and imagine what they might look like inside your house.
Whoa. They're pretty.
They are. And these are really important in Morocco because a lot of people, their houses might not have a hardwood floor, a tile floor like you might have. The house might be of stone, or it might be of sand or mud. And so the rug can actually give them, similar to what your carpet is, for something to stand on, and so they aren't standing in the grass. Well, you would be standing in the grass. For them, they would be standing in the mud. But people all around the world like to buy these rugs because they're so beautiful. They also really like spices. So in hot climates like this, oftentimes really, really flavorful spices will grow. And so these are some different examples. You can see they're very colorful, and they have all different types of salts and curries and ways to season the food.
What are spices?
There are things that you put on top of your food to change the flavor. So an example would be like salt and pepper are the most common things that you would put on your food, but there are hundreds of different spices. And in other cultures, they also have salt and pepper, but they also have more specific types of spices.
Cinnamon is a spice, and basil is a spice.
Basil.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And what other ones would you guys know? You know how like when we have taco meat, sometimes it's like really flavored. It has like a lot of different, it has chili powder and cumin and red pepper. Those are all those things that we put on different like meats and vegetables, help give it flavor. So sometimes spice means it's spicy, like it's hot, but it also a lot of times doesn't mean that. It can just mean that it adds flavor.
All right. So as we saw from the map, they also have desert. So I mentioned it's kind of like a giant beach without any water. And here's some pictures of what it looks like in the desert. And you can even see some people riding on camels.
They're riding camels.
They are.
Are some people riding horses?
Those are all
I
camels.
don't think they really have any horses, but one of the things that people like to do when they visit is sometimes people will go snowboarding on the sand. It's kind of crazy, but instead of snowboarding on snow, they snowboard on sand because they're on these hills where you can go downhill.
That's cool. If we lived there, then like we would be able to. We wouldn't really care about the snow because we didn't get enough snow, so we couldn't sled at all this winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there they call it sandboarding instead of snowboarding.
Yeah, we didn't get any snow. Enough snow. We almost did one day, but it wasn't enough.
Maybe, well, what is it? It's already March. Yeah, you're probably not going to get much snow.
Today's our first day. So.
Yeah. All right. They also have inside some of the mountainous areas rivers and waterfalls. So they don't have a lot, but all the way up in the mountains, they do have some snow in the winter. And what happens is when the mountains get snow and then it starts to get hotter, all that snow melts into water. And between the rainy season and the snow melting, it all flows into rivers as it goes down closer towards the ocean. And so here's an example of where you see some water falling in the mountains. And so even though it's really dry and really red rock in a lot of the areas, they can still see some water, and you can see plants and different kinds of green things growing all around wherever the water is.
Whoa, that's pretty.
Mhm. All right. Some photos of the cities. So one of their cities is right up against the water. And so it's kind of cool to see how dry the city is, since they don't get a lot of rain because it's kind of in the desert right near the equator, but it is right up against the ocean. So sometimes you get this really stark contrast between the water and sort of the orange and red buildings. One of their cities is totally blue. It's something that they do where they paint every single building with blue paint. And if you remember, they really like the colors, right? Just like their pottery. And so in this one city, all of their buildings are blue. It's a small
What
town.
city?
It's called Chef Chaouen. I'm probably saying it wrong, but yeah.
So interesting. I didn't know that.
And they do have a modern city as well, which is called Casablanca. And so this is probably the most similar to what you're used to seeing in the US, but it's still very different. And here's an example of what it looks like. It looks a little bit more like a normal city, right? White buildings, white and silver and gray.
Yeah.
However, the one big difference is that different from churches in the US and different from temples and shrines in Asia, they have a different kind of church, which they call a mosque. And it looks like this. This is one example. So they are very, very elegant buildings, just like churches and temples can be, where cities take a lot of pride in their buildings and build them up very, very large and very, very nice. Here's a zoomed in version.
Pretty.
Made of
With-
marble and really fancy things.
That's pretty.
Yes.
Now, one of the crazy things about Morocco that you might not have known is that they actually have a king. Instead of a president, they have a king. And he looks like this. He doesn't always dress like a king from cartoons. Sometimes he dresses up in a suit. So he's a modern day king. In fact, the country of Morocco is technically known as the Kingdom of Morocco.
Would you like having a king, or do you think you like having a president?
President.
King.
King.
King. Yeah, Morocco is actually pretty young as a country. It only has had independence for about 70 years. So if you remember, the US has been around for 300 years. And what did we say? China has,
3,000.
1,000 years.
300 million.
Yeah, a lot of years. But this one only has 70. So as a country, it's still pretty young. And
What was it before?
It was owned by France. So
Okay.
a lot of countries in Africa, their country that owned them was France up here in Europe. So a lot of people in France, they went out looking for things like spices and warmer climates, and they ended up owning some of these countries.
What is that totally blue picture?
The blue?
Down there at the bottom.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is. It looks like a picture of under the water in the ocean.
Can we see it?
No, we're gonna stay on track. He's teaching us.
All right. So one thing that is really interesting about the culture in Morocco is they have a different way of taking showers than we do in the US. In the US, people take a shower every single day, but usually you just sort of rub your body with soap and you use some shampoo and you're done. And you do it in private by yourself. In Morocco, oftentimes people go to what they call a bathing house. And so it's a big building where everyone goes to take showers. And they go not every day. They'll only go maybe once a week or twice a week. And instead of just doing a quick shower and a quick rinse off, they'll soak their body and they'll sit in a sauna or a hot tub, and they'll really, really rub at their skin with rough paper. And so they do a very, very deep shower, very, very deep bath, but less often.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Can we see
Very
some
weird.
pictures of them?
Can you click on one closer?
Yeah. Here's an example. So they're all sitting in this same bathing area, and there's multiple rooms. One of the rooms is just for sitting in the water and heating up your body. One of the rooms is for rubbing your skin so that you exfoliate, similar to what we do in the shower, but they do it much more. So they sort of clean the outer layer of their skin, and then they have a third room where they totally rinse off.
Are they together?
You can ask Uncle Drew that question.
Mm.
She's wondering if they go to them naked or if they wear clothes when they're there, what their norm is. I'm guessing it's some of it.
Depends.
Are they together when they're naked?
Sometimes.
It depends. In some cultures, that's more common because that's what everyone does. But in the U.S., it would be very weird because that's not normal. But in some cultures, they do that, and it's more, people are used to it because they have always done that since they were children.
If they're naked, would the men and the women be in separated rooms?
That would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that might be interesting to see is how men and women dress in Morocco. So a lot of people in Morocco and different countries in Africa and in the Middle East, they wear, actually some of the men too, they wear things over their head like this. So sometimes over most of their face, sometimes all over their head, but they wear things like this, which can protect them from the sun, and it can protect them from the sand because there's so much sand and it can be really windy. And so if you think about being on the beach, have you ever felt the sand blast into you from the wind?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they wear these things over their face to help.
What are those two pictures with the ladies in such fancy dresses all over?
It's some of their really fancy clothes, and then there's some more normal clothes. It's a mix because sometimes they get dressed up for things, and sometimes they wear casual clothes.
That lady.
Yeah, she's very fancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are some of the fancier dresses that they could wear. As you remember, they really like colors. So, all right, take a guess. What sport do you think they really like to play in Morocco?
Like soccer?
Ding, ding, ding. Soccer is their favorite sport. So that's what they play the most.
Cool.
I understand that.
Yeah. How about the food? Have you ever had couscous?
Yeah. I really like it, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't make it too often, but now and then it's a grain that we have.
I really don't like couscous.
Couscous is the most famous food in Morocco. They eat a lot of couscous, and they cook it inside of something called tagine. So if you see this pot where there's food in the pot and then there's like a top to it over on the side, like up here?
Yeah.
Like this one. Here's a good example. They cook it and they put it inside this pot, and it's a clay pot, and they put the top on it, and that it sort of cooks inside of it. And one of the things that's nice is when you're not eating it, if you're taking a break from your meal, you can put the top back over the plate so it doesn't get cold. Since sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had a meal where it takes you a while to eat it, and it starts hot, and by the time you're done, it's cold. Have you ever had that?
Yeah.
They use these so that it's to help prevent against that, so it can be hot the whole time.
That's cool.
And they also really, really like tea, specifically green tea with mint. It's really common. So that's
Oh,
their
tea.
favorite
I
thing
like
to drink.
I love mint and I like tea.
I didn't know
Make
you
your
There you
mint
go.
tea.
Hayden likes tea. I've never even tried it.
You have. We've had tea parties before, but you have tried it. You just don't have it often.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yes, Hayden likes to put a large amount of sugar in her tea, and she finds it to be very tasty.
I
Right?
understand.
I don't know.
And I like
what
the
you're talking
flavors.
about.
It's quite yummy.
Okay,
Can we eat tea today?
maybe we can have tea today.
Yay.
Sure.
All
When
right.
you're at school, we have tea parties sometimes. Me and Mommy.
All right.
What
let's see
kind of
what
animals do you think they have?
Camels.
They do have camels, but even more than camels, they have lots and lots of weird little animals like this.
Never heard of
It's
that
called
guy.
That's a fox. That's a fox.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
the
kind of
fake
like a
fox.
fox. It's a small fox. But because they have so many deserts, it's hard for big animals to live there because there's not a lot of plants to eat and there's not a lot of water. And so a lot of the animals that live out in these types of places are very small because they don't need as much to eat. So the little fox is an example. They have these little hamster gerbil looking things.
It's so cute.
They are.
They have some squirrels that live out in the desert.
Are they flying squirrels?
The ground squirrel.
They are not flying squirrels. They have some cats. So this one's called a sand cat. It's a really small cat that lives out in the desert.
Oh, it's so cute. And it's not even a kitten.
They have
That's cute.
lizards and geckos. Now, do you notice that the color of all the animals is kind of the same? They all kind of look like the rocks.
Yeah, for camouflage.
Exactly, for camouflage.
To blend in for
Yep.
predators.
Yep, they don't want to get eaten by the other animals. Even the big ones kind of look like the rocks. The sheep. They have porcupines. You guys know porcupines?
Aw, it's so cute.
I've never seen a porcupine before.
Yeah, I don't think we have many in the U.S. This thing
Ew,
looks
what
kind of
is
funky.
that?
A
What is-
mongoose. It's called an Egyptian mongoose, so I don't know. Maybe they started in Egypt, but. And they've got monkeys.
I've seen a monkey before.
Yeah. Are you talking about your dad? He's a human.
Yeah.
No.
No?
I've seen
He's a monkey?
real ones
Mm,
in Disney World.
I see. Very cool. Did it try and eat things out of your hair? That's one of the things that monkeys like to
No,
do.
they
They like to
were-
pick
they were
bugs out of each
outside.
other's hair.
No, they were in cages.
They weren't in cages. They were free. They were just up high swinging around, and there was like a play place that they could just swing around in. And there's even
Gotcha.
a little hammock. There's even a little hammock, and a monkey was laying in it.
That sounds fun. Did you consider going and swinging with them? Oh, this is the hedgehog.
Oh, it is so cute. Love it.
So,
Guess
those
what?
are the animals of Morocco. And I don't have too many photos to show you because those were all the good photos. But these are a few of the ones I took. What's your question, Hayden?
At church, me and my friends, we saw a couple shells of porcupines or like hedgehogs.
Nice.
Quill.
The
They're
legs,
called quills.
the back of them.
Yep.
Quills.
Yep.
The like
Super fun.
skin with the
Quills.
So here are some of the photos I took while I was there. You can see all the different types of things they're selling, different bags and purses, shirts, you know, a lot of the things that people usually sell. This is one of their big squares where a lot of people gather, and you can see what people are wearing. See the women, a lot of them are wearing the headdress and sort of the full gown. In fact, the men are wearing it as well, many of them.
What do they do for the New Year?
For the New Year, I'm not sure. I wasn't there for the New Year.
It's not as big of a tradition there in. Is that a monkey?
It's him.
Oh, Uncle Drew.
That doesn't
Do you
look
know
like
how
him.
old I was in this photo?
How?
Like 9?
I was a little older than 9, but I think I was only like 14 or 13.
So cute.
Wait, were you in that country when you were that age?
No.
No,
He
this
was
was back in the hometown near Mimi and Pop's.
See how Uncle Drew has hair like mine?
Look how much hair I had.
He just doesn't wear
And
it that
now I just have this crazy hair.
way.
Do you like my ponytail?
Yeah.
You can say no.
Okay, Cowardly Lion.
Alrighty, that's today's lesson. Any questions, students?
Do you have any questions about Morocco?
Why do you have freckles in that picture, but not now?
He probably
I think
does have
those
some
were
freckles.
pimples. Some of them, at
Mm.
least.
Those come and go in life.
There were pimples
Yeah.
on your face?
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
when you're like 13, 14, 15, like it's a lot of people have pimples at that age. And then some people have some when they're a lot older and some people don't.
I thought you said pimples.
Yeah,
Pimples?
someday when you guys are like 13 and 14 and 15, you might get pimples.
You guys will almost positively get pimples because both mommy and daddy had a bunch of them.
That's 2005. That's like 11 years before I was born, right?
Not 11 years because you were born in 2011.
Oh.
So 11 minus 5.
Yep.
That's 6.
Yep.
He was 6 years older than me.
Yep.
So he must have been not very old when I was born.
No, he wasn't 6 years
That
older than
picture
you.
was 6 years older.
That picture
So
was
at that
6 years.
time, I was 14, and that was. You said you were born when? 2011.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
Uncle Drew-
was 21 when you were born.
That makes no sense.
It does. I
No,
can
it
explain it
doesn't.
to you further if you would like.
If that was in 2005 and I was born in 2011, he was only like that many years older than me.
But
I
that
see
I
where
was. Yeah. Do you want to
when
take it,
that
Rach?
picture, when that picture was taken, he wasn't a baby. So if he was a brand new baby and you were born 6 years later, then he would be only 6 years older than you. But because that picture was taken when he was like 13, 14 years old, or around that, like 6 years after that.
I meant at that time he was that many years older.
Oh no, at that time he wasn't 6 years older than you. At that time he was, yeah, I don't know how to
It still
actually.
made no sense.
Okay. Well, this is a lesson we'll solve on another one. Can you guys say
Cool.
bye?
Bye.
Love ya.
Bye.
Bye.
How does that